Welcome to Revelation Unraveled. I'm your host, William Tapley, also known as the third eagle of the apocalypse and the co-prophet of these end times. On this program, I want to once more talk about Mr. Donald J. Trump, our new president, as he is found in Bible prophecy. We've already seen how he is found in Isaiah 45 because he is our 45th president. And now I have discovered that he is also found in Micah chapter number 5. And on this program, I want to talk about how Donald Trump is related to this great sign which will occur in the constellations on September the 23rd, a little less than 7 months from now. But before I get to that amazing prophecy, I want to show you that there are actually two images of Virgo. Now, I'm sure you are familiar with the type of image that we find on Stellarium. In other words, Virgo is shown actually as an image of the Blessed Mother. She is clothed, she is in upright position, but she is not as described in the book of Revelation. And that's why I have come up with my own description of Virgo, the constellation, as a pregnant woman about to be delivered. Now, if you look at the stars as they are arranged in the constellation, it is like a skeleton of a pregnant woman reclining and in childbirth. Well, her hands are stretched out, for example. You can see the torso is bent at the hip joints. You can see that the knees are bent. This is without a doubt a pregnant woman in labor. But what is also interesting is that the figure has no head. Now, I added a head, otherwise it would look pretty gruesome. Now, the reason this stick figure has no head is because it not only symbolizes Virgo, the Virgin, that is the Blessed Virgin Mary, but also the end times Catholic Church, the remnant church, which will have no head. In other words, it will be separated from the Roman Catholic Church, which is headed up by Pope Bergoglio, the false prophet. But there will be no head for the remnant Catholic Church. And I think the Greeks and the Romans, who originally called this constellation Virgo, they knew it had to have a head in their concept, and they usually drew a head at the edge of the left arm, at the end of the left arm where the hand is. But that is not exactly the way the Bible describes it, which actually describes this constellation better than the Greeks or the Romans. So let's look at Revelation chapter 12, verse number 1. And there appeared a great sign in heaven. I've always said that this great sign is about the imminent return of our Lord Jesus Christ. A woman clothed with the sun, with the moon under her feet, and on her head a crown of 12 stars. And I've done several videos before which show you how all these aspects are fulfilled on September the 23rd. And by the way, please don't listen to the false prophets here on YouTube who claim that someone else discovered this great sign. Yours truly published the very first video on YouTube way back 6 years ago. And I'll put a link to it below. It's called Stellarium. So if you want to see the very first video, only Third Eagle Books has it on his channel. And I think you will find it very fascinating to watch the first one. All of these other videos are copies of mine, although some of them have added a lot of important information. What surprises me is that none of them give me credit for discovering this great sign. But that's par for the course. Jesus said prophets are without honor in their own country. And that rule applies to co-prophets as well. Verse number 2. And she being with child. So that's different than usual images of Virgo, where she is shown with clothes on and not pregnant. And cried, travailing in birth, and was in pain to be delivered. Now, this image is of the remnant Catholic Church. And that's the sign that we are going to see September 23rd And that is the sign that relates to Donald Trump. Verse number 5. And she brought forth a man-child who was to rule all nations with an iron rod, and her son was taken up to God and his throne. Now that is a description of Mary. The image of Solaria would be applicable in this case, but that's not what we are going to see this September. And the woman fled into the wilderness where she had a place prepared by God. Now that is a description of the remnant Catholic Church. Mary does not flee into the wilderness. And now I should also mention that this woman cannot possibly be Israel. That's another a lie from the false prophets. And the reason is because her seed have the testimony of Jesus Christ. So now let's get on to the crux of this program, where we find President Donald Trump in the great prophecies of Micah. Micah chapter 5, verse number 1. And I want to review the first two verses because they relate very much to the verse I want to talk about today. Now shall you be laid waste. Micah is prophesying in his time to the Israelites, but in our time to the remnant Catholic Church. O daughter of the robber is the Roman Catholic Church, as I explained on my last program, the church which has been taken over by the false prophet Pope Bergoglio. They have laid siege against us. The remnant Catholic Church is going to be in a huge battle. With a rod shall they strike the cheek of the judge of Israel. Now, Israel is a code word both in Micah and Isaiah for this remnant Catholic Church, and I've explained that before. And the judge of Israel, I forgot to mention in my last program, that not only symbolizes Pope Benedict, our Pope, but this represents his martyrdom, his being struck on the cheek. And I've talked about the martyrdom of Pope Benedict many times on this program. Verse number 5. Notice verse number 5 follows verse number 1, and I will show you Micah's chart on a subsequent program. And this man, now this man in the end times is Donald Trump. Now I can't explain that on this program, but I will in a couple of programs down the road explain to you exactly how Micah proves to us that this man in the end times is Donald J. Trump. And this man shall be our peace. That is the peace for those of us in this remnant Catholic Church. When the Assyrian is a very common term in the Bible for the Antichrist, shall come into our land, I believe this is the United States, that's what this prophecy is for, and when he shall set his foot in our houses, we are going to be subjugated to the Antichrist in these horrible end times. And we shall raise against him 7 shepherds and 8 princes, or principal men in the douay reims. So Donald Trump will not be able to help us right away. Instead, we will have 15 personages opposing the Antichrist. I don't know who all these people are. Then again, this may be symbolic. 7 plus 8 equals 15, and we know Mary's rosary is the weapon Jesus will use against the Antichrist. And now let's look at the key verse, which I have not talked about yet on this program, and that is verse number 3 of Micah chapter 5. Therefore will he, Donald Trump, give them up even till the time, what time? September 23rd, 2017. Wherein she that travails shall bring forth, a clear reference to Revelation 12:2. And this great sign is in Virgo, a pregnant woman shall bring forth, and the remnant of his brethren, well, Donald Trump is a Protestant. The remnant of his Protestant brethren shall be converted. Not only is Donald Trump going to convert, but his Protestant brethren as well, to the children of Israel. Now, who are the children of Israel? The children of Israel are who this passage is directed to, and that is the remnant Catholic Church. And how do we know this is not the actual nation of Israel or the Jewish people? Well, the reason is because this is a dual prophecy. Verse number 3 is also a prophecy from Micah to the Israelites of his time about their Messiah. And most Bible scholars understand that he will give them up, that is, he, so to speak, abandons the Jews until 9:23:17. Once again, that is the time for both of these prophecies to be fulfilled. Jesus will return on that date. Wherein she that travails shall bring forth, and the remnant of his brethren, Jesus' brethren, the Jews of these end times will also convert. Who do they convert to? Shall be converted or returned, is the phrase in the KJV, either one, to the children of Israel. Well, the Jews are not going to convert to Judaism. They are already Jews. So what does Micah mean here? When Jesus returns, his brethren will be converted, but not to Judaism. They will be converted to the remnant Catholic Church, just like the Protestant brethren of Donald Trump. Israel must be symbolic, and that's how we know that the Protestants are going to convert to the remnant Catholic Church. And by the way, I should add here, don't listen to the false prophets who say that this woman clothed with the sun represents Israel. This is impossible for either the clothed version of Virgo or the pregnant in labor version of Virgo. And the reason is because her seed have the testimony of Jesus Christ. The false prophets are going to lead you astray here on YouTube. And now I wanted to read a very interesting letter I got from one of my subscribers. He's a Jewish gentleman by the name of Mordecai, and he always keeps me informed from a Jewish perspective. And the last letter he wrote to me several months ago, I did not pay any attention to, but I should have, because here's what he writes this time. This time, please do not forget to mention that Stellarium 9:23:17 coincides exactly with Shabbat Shuva. Well, this is interesting. I never heard of that term. What are you talking about, Mordecai? This is the Sabbath which falls in between the Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah, and Yom Kippur, Day of Atonement, a big fast day. Shabbat Shuva is also, therefore, the first Sabbath of the Jewish New Year. I'm sure this is very significant. Thank you, Mordecai. The year will be 5778. There's those numbers 7 and 8 again. 8 shepherds and 7 princes. Also, you have the 77 possibly signifying Trump. Now, here's the real spinner for you. Now, listen to this. This is fascinating. Did you know what Shuvah means? It means the return. Well, thank you so much, Mordecai. And I want to add at this time a previous program I did, which Mordecai was very interested in, and that was about the book of Tobias. Because Tobias tells us that the Jews are not responsible for their unbelief in Jesus Christ. Tobias the elder is blinded, if you remember the story, after he has been out performing an act of mercy, that is burying the dead. And he falls asleep under a bird's nest, and some bird dung falls out during the night and blinds him. What does that mean? That means that the elder Tobias, who represents the elder denomination of Judaism, is blinded by an act of the Holy Spirit, because the bird dung comes from above. Now, it's still bird dung. In other words, it's not the truth, but it is not the Jews' fault. And I suspect the Jews, for the last 2,000 years, have had a very important mission in maintaining the prophecies, for example, of the Old Testament. Where would we be if it was just the Catholic Church? I had a priest once tell me that Daniel was no longer relevant. Of course, he was completely wrong. But the Jews have maintained the Old Testament. Perhaps that was their mission. In any case, in the story of Tobias, the younger Tobias does return, and he represents Jesus Christ. And he has the parts of a fish, which he applies to the elder Tobias' eyes and clears away his blindness. And the fish, of course, itself represents Jesus Christ. And maybe you remember the story where a dog precedes the younger Tobias, and of course he represents the prophet Elijah. And now getting back to the conversion of Donald Trump and his Protestant brethren, this is also prophesied in the book of Revelation, because the star that falls represents Martin Luther, and he unleashes a plague of locusts which lasts for 5 months. But those 5 months symbolize 5 centuries. Those 5 centuries are up at the same time as this great sign. In other words, I believe it was October the 31st on Halloween, 500 years ago, that Luther posted his famous 95 Theses. The Protestant Reformation will be over at the same time as this great sign, approximately. Now, it doesn't have to be exactly this date, because Luther posted his theses on Halloween, the 31st of 1517. But all of these events are coinciding. The book of Revelation, the book of Micah, chapter number 5, this great sign. And we are living in perilous times, exciting times. And to understand these prophecies, you really do need a co-prophet. I've never said I'm the only co-prophet, but most of the information given out to you on YouTube about this great sign, even about who discovered it, because I discovered it. And the false prophets are not going to tell you the truth, because they are tooting their own horns. But if you really want to know the amazing prophecies, especially about our new president, Mr. Donald Trump, you have to tune to this channel. And if you want to know more information about my ministry here on YouTube, visit my thirdeaglemedia.com website.